Hello everyone. So welcome to session 28 of IS Bhavat's Rapid Revision series of 500 high probable topics for Prelims 2020. I'm Preetham Reddy and I'll be dealing with 15 important topics in this session which is very crucial for Prelims examination this year. So first important topic is COP3, that is Conference of Parties 3 to the Minamata Convention on Mercury. So it was held in 2019. So the main things what you have to remember for Prelims is it is a global treaty to protect human health and the environment from the adverse effects of the mercury. So Minamata Convention deals with mercury. So this Minamata Convention on Mercury, that is COP3, took place in November 2019 at the International Conference Center in Geneva, Switzerland. So this Minamata Convention, it provides control over various products which are containing mercury. So it mainly deals with controlling and regulating products which are containing mercury. So the major outcome of Minamata Convention on Mercury COP3 is manufacturing, importing and exporting of products that are containing mercury will be altogether prohibited by 2020, except where countries have requested an exemption for an initial 5 years period. So you have to know target is set to prohibit all the products which are containing mercury should be prohibited by 2020. And for exam you should know what products contain mercury. So the products that contain mercury, they include certain types of batteries, CFL bulbs, that is compact fluorescent lamps, relays, soaps and cosmetics, thermometers and blood pressure devices, right? Even dental fillings which use mercury amalgam, they are also regulated under this particular convention and their use must be phased down through a number of measures. And based on Minamata Convention on Mercury, even Indian government has taken certain measures. So we have brought Battery Waste Management Rules 2020. And for prelims, one should know that this Battery Waste Management Rules 2020, so the new rules do not apply to equipment connected with the protection of essential security interests, equipment designed to be sent into space, emergency and alarm systems, emergency lighting and medical equipment. And also this new Battery Waste Management Rules, it provides that all types of battery which are listed in Schedule 1, regardless of their shape, volume, weight, material and composition or use, they will be regulated. So one should know what types of batteries are listed under this particular Schedule 1. So under Schedule 1, the batteries have been categorized under two sections. One is the primary and second one is the secondary. So primary cells, they deal with non-rechargeable batteries, whereas secondary cells, they are rechargeable batteries. So under primary cell, usually we have alkaline batteries and under secondary cells we have lead acid batteries. So alkaline, aluminium air batteries or Grove cell or clock cell or zinc chloride battery, they are categorized under primary cells. So usually mercury batteries which are used in real-time clock of CPU or photographic light meters, and silver oxide batteries which are used in iPods, digital diaries, wristwatches, stopwatches, toys, artificial pacemakers, all these come under alkaline batteries or under the primary cell or non-rechargeable batteries. It also includes zinc carbon batteries, especially those dry cell batteries. So general purpose low price batteries used in low power drain applications such as flashlights, remote control toys, table clocks, wall clocks, etc. So the secondary cell, that is rechargeable batteries like lithium ion batteries which are used in our computers, radios, cell phones and tape players, etc. It also includes nickel cadmium batteries which are used in cameras, rechargeable appliances such as portable power tools, handheld vacuums, etc. Next you have to know, as per the proposed new rules, no one can sell a battery that contains more than 5 ppm of mercury by weight or a portable battery that contains more than 0.002% of cadmium. So the new rules have provided for performance testing of the batteries. So there is mandatory registration with the Bureau of Indian Standards. So you have to remember. And no person can sell a battery or battery pack unless it is marked with the crossed out wheeled bin symbol. Okay. So this particular V symbol is important. V symbol is associated with waste of electrical and electronic equipment. Okay. So remember V symbol, it deals with electrical and electronic equipments, especially CD means cadmium, Hg is mercury, and Pb is lead. So the new rules, it provides that no person can sell a battery or battery pack unless it is marked with the crossed out wheeled bin symbol. And also the government has proposed that manufacturers will have to use the international recycling sign on the batteries, that is the V symbol. So finally you have to remember, no person shall place on the market a button cell which contains 5 ppm of mercury by weight unless it is marked with the chemical symbol Hg, and a battery containing more than 0.002% of cadmium by weight unless it is marked with chemical symbol Cd, and a battery containing more than 0.004% of lead by weight unless it marked with the chemical symbol Pb. Okay, so these are the regulations which have been listed by Battery Waste Management Rules 2020. So next important topic is Environment Protection Amendment Rules 2020. See, during 2019, UPSC had framed a question regarding Environment Protection Act 1986. However, the statements dealt with the recent EPA rules. So this year also, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, it has notified new rules to the Environment Protection Act. So Environment Protection Amendment Rules 2020. So for prelims, just you have to remember that the new rules, it is associated with water quality standards for coastal waters marine outfalls. So they are using certain parameters to measure water quality. So you have to know what all are the parameters that are used to measure water quality. So cadmium, copper, mercury, lead, arsenic, chromium and monochrotopus. And you have to remember the criteria used is based on the criteria continuous concentration. So it is associated with measuring water quality. So this criteria continuous concentration, it is an estimate of higher concentration of the material in ambient water. So this year EPA rules is mainly focusing on water quality standards for coastal water marine outfalls. So next topic is coal gasification and hydrothermal liquefaction. For prelims point of view, you have to just remember coal gasification, it is the process of producing syngas. So this syngas, it is a mixture consisting primarily of carbon monoxide, hydrogen, carbon dioxide, natural gas and water vapor from coal and water, air or oxygen. And you must be knowing, historically coal was gasified in order to produce coal gas and it was known as town gas. So coal gas is combustible and was used for municipal lighting and heating before the advent of large scale production of natural gas from oil wells. So in current practice, large scale coal gasification installations are primarily for electricity generation or for production of chemical feedstocks. The hydrogen obtained from coal gasification can be used for various purposes such as making ammonia, powering a hydrogen economy or upgrading fossil fuels. Alternatively, this particular coal derived syngas, it can be converted into transportation fuels such as gasoline and diesel through additional treatment, or into methanol, which itself can be used as a transportation fuel or fuel additive, or which can be converted into gasoline. So natural gas from this coal gasification, it can be cooled until it liquefies for use as a fuel in the transport sector. Okay, so these are the applications and significance of syngas. So next we will know about hydrothermal liquefaction. It is a thermal depolymerization process and it is used to convert wet biomass into crude like oil. It is sometimes referred to as bio-oil or bio-crude, and it is done under moderate temperature and high pressure. Next topic is Climate Change Performance Index and Shannon-Weiner Index. So these two indexes are important this year. One, because Climate Change Performance Index, India for the first time ranking among the top 10 countries. So India is right now 9th rank in 2020. So this Climate Change Performance Index, it is designed by the German Environmental and Development Organization, that is German Watch. So this Climate Change Performance Index is important because it was first published in 2005. However, the updated version is presented at the UN Climate Change Conference annually. And this Climate Change Performance Index, it is released by 3 international NGOs, German Watch, New Climate Institute and Climate Action Network. And according to this CCPI, US ranks last, and followed by Saudi Arabia and Australia. And next we have to know that under CCPI, the national performance, they are assessed based on 14 indicators, especially from the following categories. So 4 important categories are important, that is greenhouse gas emission, renewable energy, energy use and climate policy. So out of this 4 categories, so greenhouse gas emissions, so it has more weightage, that is 40%, then renewable energy, energy use and climate policy. So next, Shannon-Weiner index was in news because it was used by recent Indian Forest Report 2019. So this Shannon-Weiner index, it is a measure of species richness and abundance. So for prelims, you have to just remember Shannon-Weiner index, it is used to measure species richness and abundance. So this index is used for comparing diversity of species between various habitats, and several quantitative indices have been designed to provide information on different aspects of biodiversity such as Margalef index, Menchinic index, Simpson index and Shannon-Weiner index. So just remember Shannon-Weiner index, it is used for measuring species richness and abundance. Next important index is Global Peace Index. So this Global Peace Index is published by Institute for Economic and Peace. So it ranks 163 independent states and territories according to their levels of peacefulness. It ranks countries and region on 3 broad-based themes. One is extent of conflict, safety and security, level of militarization. So according to this Global Peace Index report, for the world as a whole, 2019 was the first time the peace score has been improved in the last 5 years. And West Asia and North Africa is the least peaceful region of the world. So you have to remember West Asia and North Africa, then it is followed by South Asia. And Europe is the most peaceful region. And Afghanistan was the least peaceful country of the world. So it has replaced Syria, while Iceland, it remains the most peaceful country in the world. And with respect to India, India ranks around 141 and its rank has been down by 5 ranks. So India's rank decreased by 5 ranks compared to 2018. So India's ranking is 141. So India's ranking and scores have decreased largely due to increased internal conflicts, country's relation with Pakistan and border tensions with China, and also the report noted India's score was high on the political terror scale. Next important topic is locust. So this desert locust, it is a short-horned grasshopper. And you should know what is the difference between ordinary grasshopper and locust. So remember, they differ from ordinary grasshoppers in their ability to change behavior. So they gregarize and they form swarms that can migrate over large distance. So this is the unique feature of this particular locust. So they can rapidly reproduce and increase some 20-fold in 3 months. And the normal locust season in India, it usually spans between June to November and it coincides with the Kharif season. Next, you have to know some unique characteristics of this locust. So for laying eggs, they require bare ground, which is rarely found in areas with dense vegetation. So they can breed in Rajasthan, but not in Indo-Gangetic plains or Godavari and Kaveri delta. But green vegetation is required for hopper development. So first is you have to know about the breeding pattern, that is in dry desert region. However, they need green vegetation for hopper development. So hopper is the intermediate stage between the nymph that is hatched from the eggs and the winged adult moth. And you have to know, as individuals or in small isolated groups, these locusts are not very dangerous. But when they grow into large populations, their behavior changes. So they transform from solitary phase to gregarious phase, and from gregarious phase to swarms. And a single swarm can contain 40 to 80 million adults in 1 square kilometer, and these can travel up to 150 kilometers a day. And you should know climate factor plays a major role in their movement. So apart from the search for food, their movement has been aided by westerly winds. And especially in India this time, westerly winds were further strengthened due to the low pressure area which was created by cyclone Amphan in the Bay of Bengal. And next you have to know a pattern of warming in the Indian Ocean, that is Indian Ocean dipole, may also be a trigger And rainfall, especially torrential in several parts of West Asia, Oman, Yemen, and in the Horn of Africa, that is Ethiopia, Somali, Kenya. So when it rains in these places, it facilitates the formation of several locust swarms. Due to favorable winds, it helps swarms to fly and it helps to breed them in traditional grounds in Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan and India. And the unusually mild summer in 2020, which saw several bouts of rainfall over especially north and western India, so it also helped the insects breed. And strong Indian Ocean dipole, they are expected to become more frequent due to global warming of oceans, which means regular locust attacks. Next, you have to know FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization. It provides information on the general locust situation to the global community, and also it gives timely warnings and forecasts to those countries in danger of invasion. And next, in India we have Locust Warning Organization, which works under Ministry of Agriculture, Farmers and Welfare. So it is responsible for monitoring, survey and control of these desert locusts. Next important topic is pangolins. So pangolins, they are one of the most trafficked animals in the world and they are classified as critically endangered species. And pangolins are in huge demand due to their medicinal value and also consumption of their meat, especially in China and Vietnam. So for prelims point of view, you have to remember these Indian pangolins, they have thick scaly skin, right? They have thick scaly skin and they are hunted for meat and used in traditional Chinese medicine. And these pangolins, they are the most trafficked wildlife species in the world. So out of 8 species of pangolin, India and Chinese pangolins are found in India, and both these species are listed under Schedule 1, Part 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. So IUCN Red List, Indian pangolin is endangered and Chinese pangolin is critically endangered. So you have to remember, you might get confused. There are some unique characteristics which are given in the figure, you can go through it. And next important topic is rhinos without borders. So recently the New Delhi Declaration was adopted during the second meeting of the Asian Rhino Range countries. So international boundaries, it should not come in the way of conservation of rhinos. That's the reason experts had noted that transboundary cooperation and collaboration is needed between India, Nepal and Bhutan, especially to conserve and protect greater one-horn rhino. And remember, there are no rhinos in Bhutan. However, some from Manas National Park in adjoining Assam or Baksa Tiger Reserve in West Bengal are known to cross over occasionally. So under Rhinos Without Borders, India to tie up with 4 nations to save rhinos. So India will be collaborating with Bhutan, Nepal, Indonesia, Malaysia. So all these 5 countries, they will be collaborating and cooperating in order to increase the population of 3 species of Asian rhinos, that is greater one-horn rhino which is found in Indian subcontinent, and Javan rhinos and Sumatran rhinos. And also Javan and Sumatran rhino are critically endangered. However, greater one-horn rhino which is found in India is vulnerable. So next important topic is Operation Clean Art. So you have to remember this Operation Clean Art, it is associated with mongoose. So this Operation Clean Art, it was recently conducted in India in order to ensure that the mongoose hairbrush trade be closed down across the country. And this Operation Clean Art, it was conceived by Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. So mongoose hair is in huge demand, especially due to artists using them as paint brushes. So India is a major source for these brushes. And mongoose is right now listed under Schedule 2 of Wildlife Protection Act 1972, and it is listed as least concern on the IUCN Red List. And mongoose species are native to the Indian subcontinent and West Asia. So remember, Operation Clean Art, it is associated with protecting mongoose and also to prohibit trade of mongoose hairbrush. Next important species is Jerdon courser. So this species is critically endangered and it is a nocturnal bird which is known only from Eastern Ghats. So this Jerdon courser, it inhabits open patches within scrub forests, and this habitat is under tremendous pressure due to various anthropogenic activities. So Jerdon coursers, they are found only in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, and there might be around 25 birds of this species, and they are found usually only in Sri Lankamalleshwara Wildlife Sanctuary, which is located in Kadapa district in the world. So you have to remember Sri Lankamalleshwara Wildlife Sanctuary, which is in Andhra Pradesh, and this Jerdon cursor is critically endangered and is found only in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. Next important topic is Salim Ali Center for Ornithology and Natural History. So in our previous sessions, we would have come across this particular SACON many times. I even gave you an homework to do related to SACON. So Salim Ali Center for Ornithology and Natural History is a center for information, education and research in ornithology and natural history. And it was inspired by and is named in honor of Salim Ali, that is the leading pioneer of ornithology in India. So this SACON is an autonomous organization and it was established in 1990 as a public NGO partnership between Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and Bombay Natural History Society under the Center of Excellence scheme and registered under the Indian Society Registration Act. And you have to remember this SACON headquarters, it is located at Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. So SACON's mission is to help conserve India's biodiversity and its sustainable use through research, education, people's participation with birds at the center stage. See why SACON is important, because 1, COP CMS was recently held in India, and 2, there was first bird survey which was taken place in India. So we can expect a question on bird sanctuaries and also Salim Ali Center for Ornithology and Natural History. And maybe also an international initiative, that is Important Bird and Biodiversity Area. So this Important Bird and Biodiversity Area, they are a network of sites which are exceptionally rich in avian diversity and other taxa, including rare, endangered and threatened species. Since such habitats fall outside the protected areas, they are vulnerable to pressures from anthropogenic activities and also destruction of their habitats, leading to a decline in avian diversity. Therefore, conservation of such habitats which support high number of bird species assumes greater significance. That's why this Important Bird and Biodiversity Area initiative was launched by BirdLife International. So this IBA is an initiative by BirdLife International, and it is a program which aims to identify, monitor and protect a global network of important bird and biodiversity areas for conservation of the world's birds and associated diversities. And this BirdLife's Important Bird and Biodiversity Area concept has been developed and applied for over 30 years. And initially these important bird and biodiversity areas, they were identified only for terrestrial and freshwater environments. However, over the past decade, IBA process and method has also adopted and applied in the marine areas.